Alright everybody, welcome to Tips and Tricks for your first regatta. My name is Jenna Ferrieri. I'm one of the sailing specialists with Navionics, and I just want to give a shout out to them for hosting this webinar tonight. Before we begin, I just want to go over the technology we're using, the webinar technology, for those of you that have never played with it before. So you'll notice on the right hand side of your screen there's a dashboard set up with a lot of options and control panel. I have you all muted at the moment, and that's just to cut down on some background noise. I'm not ignoring you, I promise. And there's a few other options there, but the most important one is down at the bottom. There's an instant message type screen where you can type in questions or comments. If at any point you have a question, feel free to type it in there. If I notice it, I'll try to answer it. If not, I'll go through at the end and try to answer anything that I haven't noticed during the webinar itself. So we'll go ahead and get started. The outline for today, I'm gearing this more towards the beginner racer, someone maybe that's never been on the course before, somebody maybe that's crewed a lot but maybe is stepping into the skipper role, or just a newer skipper. But hopefully if there are some more experienced racers out there tonight, you'll get at least one thing out of this. So that's my intention, but it'll start off kind of slow for those of you that have raced before. So we're going to go through some racing basics. We'll go through notice of race and the sailing instructions, touch a little bit on courses. We'll go through the 5-minute starting sequence, a quick overview of the flags that race committee will throw at you out on the water, and then we'll get into preparation. So what you can do before you leave the dock, on your way out to the course, and then what you should be doing once you're out at the course in pre-start to kind of get yourself prepped and get a game plan formed. And then we'll finish off with some tactics and some strategies that hopefully you can try to implement or think about at least when you're out there the next time on the water. So we'll start off with racing basics, and I'm going to throw 2 polls at you right off the bat. So the first one is just asking what position you sail out on the water. So I'll let it run for a little bit. We'll get some results here. Okay. So it looks like we got a few skippers, mostly crew. Some of you do both. And then the next poll that I'm going to do here is just asking for experience level. So just mainly to judge who I'm talking to. So maybe I can gloss over some of the really basic things, or maybe I'll have to linger a little bit longer in a little bit more detail. But it looks like most of you are pretty confident, have sailed before, which is good. So I'm pretty much assuming that you can all sail a boat around a course, that you know different terminology and things like that. So this won't be basic to that level, but more just basic first time out on the course, maybe not really knowing what to expect or see when you're out there. So this is good. Alright, so we're going to start off with the notice of race. So the first bullet I have here is a little bit corny, but think of it as the save the date. So it's got some important information, but it doesn't have all of the details that you need to get through the day on the water. Typically you'll look at the NORs to find the schedule of events, any eligibility requirements or measurement requirements if you're in a one design class, and registration details and fees. It might also include an overview of the course, any of the rules and scoring procedures if the race committee has gotten to that point where they know that information. So I've got one example here from San Diego Nudes that took place last week, or 2 weeks ago rather. Just as an example, so we don't have to read through it, but you can see there's a little bit on rules, some advertising, eligibility and entry, so that's a big one, and then fees. It tells you what you need to do to register, just a sentence or 2 on schedules, tells us when the sailing instructions will come out. So the regatta took place starting the 14th, so they said SIs would be out no later than the day before that, so giving themselves time, but it's good to know the date that it would be out. And then the second page is just a little more, like 1 sentence, pretty vague information there. Okay. So moving on to sailing instructions. So the sailing instructions are going to be the meat of the information that you need. They're going to give all the details and procedures for the race. Pretty much if you have any question regarding the regatta, it will most likely be answered in those SIs. So it's going to have much more in depth on the rules, any changes to the rules that the race committee will be following. details on the course and the marks that are going to be used. Particularly important if there are multiple fleets racing, especially multiple fleets on the same starting line. So you could have bigger boats sailing longer legs on the same start line as smaller boats sailing shorter legs. So you want to make sure, depending on your start, that you're not rounding the wrong marks or sailing too far or not sailing far enough, say. It will also go through any signals that the race committee will make either onshore before you head out on the water, so that could be like a delay in racing, or any signals that they can make afloat. So once you're out on the course, if they have a change that they need to tell the fleet, they'll put up a signal and that'll let you know they're trying to get in touch with you. It'll go through racing start times, the last time that a race can be started, so you can judge what time you'll be back at the dock based off of that roughly, and any time limits. And then it will also most likely go through recalls, protests, procedures, and scoring. So the next 2 bullet points I say that your crew should read through the SIs. So not only should you read them, have at least a few other people on board also read through in case you forget one of the details. You can at least ask the question, maybe somebody else can answer it. And then also carry at least 1 copy on board for reference. So we'll talk about that a little bit later in the prep side, but just having it on board in case everyone on board that has read them forgets, you can just pull the copy out and quickly reference it. So I have another example from Nudes for the SIs. So you can see a lot more information in these, a little bit of a different layout, so you may see different style layouts in terms of the font, but that's not a big deal. But it goes through rules, schedule, starting signals, divisions, class, the different flags, starting sequences, courses, any signals made ashore and afloat, what to do if you're going to retire from a race, any changes to the course. On the second page, we've got some information on the finish and time limits. On the right-hand column, media, television, conduct. And then in the middle, we've got some scoring and communication. On the left, protests. So just a lot more information that you can see in this. On page 3 here, probably one of the more important pages to have on board, if anything, take this page with you, are the course diagrams. So typically, we've been seeing more and more windward-leeward courses for the past 10 years or so maybe, in lieu of like the triangles or some odd course. So the windward-leeward course, the number that you see on the left here, you get a highlighter out, or spotlight. So the number that you see on the left here, this course 3 and course 4 and course 5, corresponds to the number of legs in the race. So for course 3 we go upwind, so we have 1 windward leg, then we go downwind, so that's leg 2, and then we finish to windward, so that would be leg 3. Leg 4 does the same thing. We've got windward leg 1, leeward leg 2, windward leg 3, and then leeward finish, that's our leg 4. So 4 legs on that, course 4. So they're pretty easy to remember, but sometimes they'll throw an oddball in, maybe something with different gates or something like that. So always good to know what's going on there. And then the bottom 2 here is just leg 5 and 6, so they're just adding 1 more leg. So the odd number courses, like a course 3 or a course 5, you'll most likely only see at the end of the day. So typically you'll see the even number courses, so the race committee can set their anchor and not have to move all day unless there's a wind shift and they need to change their location based on that. But then at the end of the day, if there's, let's see, we'll draw a picture here. So if we've got our yacht club up here, race committee will be a little bit generous and they'll move, so they know that once you finish, you're going to want to sail toward the yacht club for the regatta party, so they know you're going to sail this leg anyway. They'll just move and make that part of the leg. So if you've been sailing course 4s all day, if they're running short on time, maybe they'll drop the leg, just go to a 3, or maybe they'll do a 5, but they'll have you finishing in the direction you're going to sail, so you don't have to finish and then turn around and go back. That's a little mean. So they're usually pretty nice in regards to that. So if you see an odd number course is most likely your last course for the day. Okay, so moving on to just a few more notes on courses. So if you're new to racing, these are maybe details you've never seen before. So the two details are the offset mark and the gate. So both of these are maneuvers to try to limit traffic at each of the roundings. So the offset mark is going to be most likely on your windward leg. So you'll come around, you'll round the primary mark, which is that orange triangle. Then you also have to round the offset mark, which I have as the red dot, before you can head downwind and set your spinnaker. So that just keeps any boats heading downwind away from any of the boats that are still sailing to the upwind mark there. So it just limits some of the congestion in that area. The gate, on the other hand, is a little bit different. So instead of rounding both marks, you pick which one you want to round. So you can come around either one there. And that'll factor into your game plan a lot. So if this mark were set closer to upwind, there would be the advantage to round that one since you're not traveling as far of a distance. So there's a lot of tactics involved with the gate, but basically it's a maneuver by race committee to limit the traffic, and you have the option of rounding either buoy. So that's the big takeaway there. The 5-minute starting sequence. Okay, so in a 5-minute start, the race committee is going to put up a flag or take down a flag, and then sound a horn at the 5-minute, the 4-minute, the 1-minute, and the 0, which is your start. So if you're setting a timer to that, it's best to set your timer to the flag. So you'll see the flag go up, but you may hear a delay in the sound just depending on how far you are from the race committee. Ideally, the horn goes off as the flag hits the top of the flagpole, but sometimes there's a delay, or maybe you're farther away from it, so you hear it a little bit later, seconds, milliseconds even. But if you want to set the timer and be as accurate as possible, set it to the flag. And basically the sequence I have in the table down here. So the 5-minute is going to be your class flag is going to go up with a horn, and that's your warning signal. And then your prep signal is at 4 minutes. That's when the prep flag will go up, again with a horn. At 1 minute, they'll reverse that. They'll take the prep flag down with a horn, and then at your start, your class flag comes down with a horn. So in that 5-minute sequence, your class flag is always up. So if you ever have a question of who's starting, maybe you lost track, maybe you don't know if your class is starting, take a look at what the class flag is flying, and that'll help you answer that question. Okay, so flags. So your class flag is just going to be the flag for the class that you're sailing in. So whatever boat you're sailing in likely has a flag designated for it, so it'll just be that one. If for some reason your class does not have a flag, race committee will designate a flag in the sailing instructions. But the prep flag is where we get into some of the options. So the first flag that they can use as a prep flag is the P. So it's the blue and white squares. If they're flying this, it's basically a no penalty start. So any boat over the line early, you must restart, but you can either return just by heading back down, ducking across the line, or rounding one of the ends. So you don't get any penalties, you just have to restart by either of those methods. If race committee is using the I flag, Rule 30.1 is in effect, and basically what that means is if you're over the line early, you can't just duck back down through the line. You must round the end. So you either have to head down, go around the pin, or go around the race committee boat. You can't just cross back through and then head back upwind and restart. You have to go around the end. The third one on the list here is the Z flag. It's one of the other prep flag options, and if they're flying that, Rule 30.2 is in effect. So that's going to be if you're in the triangle formed by the starting line and the windward mark, so if you think of that as the triangle, you'll receive a 20% penalty if you're in that area 1 minute to the start. So you'll get a point deduction because you were over early 1 minute to the start. The race committee can fly a combination, so they can fly the I and the Z. And basically what that means is if you're in that triangle a minute early, not only do you get the 20% penalty, but you can only restart by rounding one of the ends. There's a fourth flag option that's very rarely used for general racing. It's usually only like championship level, and that's going to be the black flag. So if the prep signal flag is a black flag, it means if you're in that triangle, you're automatically disqualified, so you don't even race. But very rarely will you see that used. Okay, so those are the options for the prep flag. We'll move on to some other ones now. The L flag. If race committee flies the L flag, it means to come within hailing distance, that they have something to tell you. It's also the flag that they will use when they're ready to check you in. So when you get out on the water, they'll check in with race committee so that they know you're out there, you're ready to race, they need to keep track of you. So you'll see the L flag flown in the mornings, and then if you see it later in the day, it just means come within hailing distance. The next flag down is the X flag, and that's an individual recall. If only a handful of boats cross early, and it's enough that race committee can make note of all of them, they'll just do an individual recall. So they'll make a signal with the horn, and they'll also put this X flag up. And as a courtesy, they can call out the sail numbers, but they don't have to. So if you think you were close, and then the gun goes off and they put the X flag up, but they're not reading off sail numbers, it's probably in your best interest to just duck back and restart, just in case. But if they are in the habit of calling out sail numbers, then just listen for your sail number. The next option they have for recalls is the general recall. So they'll put up the first substitute flag, and this is the triangle pennant. It's blue and yellow. And basically, if more than a handful of boats cross early, if it's more than race committee can get written down in the quick few seconds, they'll put this up, and that means everyone that just started will come back to the starting line, and they'll start a new 5-minute sequence for everyone. So you basically just get a redo on that start. The last flag I have on the list is the C flag, and that's just a course change. So if you see the C flag come up, pay attention to the course board. There's likely going to be a change either to your class or one of the other classes, but they'll make sure everyone that's supposed to know knows. All right, we'll move into race preparation now. So what we can do before we leave the dock and what we can do on the way out to the course in order to make sure that we're well prepared for the day. So race prep at the dock. Read the SIs, make sure your crew has read through them. Talked about that before. Store at least one copy on board. I like to put them in the plastic sheet protectors. You can put a piece of duct tape over the top if you want, just to keep them dry. And then I put them in a pocket back at the helm. So if I need to quickly grab them and take a look, they're within reaching distance. I don't need somebody to go down below and grab them. And the plastic just keeps them waterproof. The third bullet down is pretty intuitive for most of you, hopefully, is to look up the weather and the wind information for the day. So use the wind info to make a sail selection plan or make your initial sail selection. If your course or class allows for different head sails or something, you can make a game plan for the day roughly based off that. And then the sub-bullet I have there is, do you need to prep for a reef? So if you see it's going to be gusting and you're a little worried, set up for the reef. Run the reefing line through the grommet if it's not there already. I usually find the days we question it and then go out without it are the days we absolutely need to put the reef in, and it just puts your crew at a lot of risk if they have to kind of put themselves in a precarious position to get that line rigged. So best to get it done and rigged at the dock, and then you'll be safe when you're out there if you have to prep for the reef. And then the last mark I have here is to enter any locations or course headings into your GPS if race committees put those out. So the Navionics app lets you do that if you just want to carry your phone. You can put in waypoints there, or if you just have a handheld GPS, that's another option there. Prep on the way out. Monitor local wind conditions, either through a true wind indicator. Luffing your sails is an option, but then again, you're luffing and you're damaging your sails. So an option to that is to go close hauled on a port tack, get your compass course, and then go over to starboard tack. Get your compass course there and just average the two. So that's an alternative to luffing, but if you have a true wind indicator on board, that's going to be your best bet. So just monitor, and you're looking for shifts or just oscillations, areas that are going to be a little bit fluky maybe. Navionics does give wind data, but it's really good to get the local, so what's happening right near your boat. So just monitoring and observing. The next thing on here is to rig your sails and raise your main. get everything prepped, ready to go before you're in all the cluster of the boats at the start. Typically, you'll leave the jib down until just before your starting sequence, unless you're going to do some practice legs. Just gives your crew a break, less jobs that need to be done, gets the big head sail down so you can see forward, so increases your visual, and just helps not tire out your crew so they can be ready for the race. And then the last bullet is to visually locate marks. So even if you've put them into your app on your phone or into your GPS, getting a visual sighting of them is really useful. So likely on your upwind leg it'll be a mile, 2 miles, maybe 3, and you're not going to see that little yellow dot in the distance. So if you know there's a building behind it or a hill and you can see that from the start line, you kind of have a general idea of where you're going without actually knowing specifically where the buoy is. So just a mental game, having something to sail for until you're close enough that you can see the buoy. Alright, prep pre-start. So when you get out to the course, if the race committee boat's flying their L flag, you're going to want to pass by on a starboard tack to check in. Usually helps to call out your sail number in case they can't see. And usually they'll call it back just as a confirmation. So that's just telling them that you're out there, you're ready to race, and they need to monitor you. So if you disappear for some reason, they'll get worried and they'll look for you. Or if you head in, just let them know so they can make a mark on their clipboards. You'll also look at the race committee boat for the course number, heading to windward, and the distance to the first leg. So I've got some questions on the bottom here that relate to the picture. So it's can you spot, and then it's got the course, heading, and distance. So on this race committee boat, that's on these boards on the back. So course 3, 2.1 miles, and then looks like the heading is covered up from here, but we'll look there. On this boat, it might be a little bit different on your race committee boat. The halyards for the start flags, so these flags back here are going to be where they raise and lower your prep flag and your class flag. So we'll look at that for our timers in the starting sequence. And then the starting line flag. So we've got this orange flag here and this orange flag here. So the little one looks like it's on the boat, but it's actually the pin mark, so it's offset a distance. So the starting line is between these two orange flags. Okay, so we've gotten out to the course, we've checked in, we know what course we're sailing, we know the heading and the distance to the first mark, so now it's time to set ourselves up and get our game plan going. So is the line square? Is the starting line square to the wind? So race committee tries to set it up so that the wind is perpendicular to the start line. But things happen, the wind shifts, maybe they drop the pin buoy a little bit off, so the line ends up skewed. And that means one end is going to be favored over the other. So my poll at the bottom here is who has seen this diagram before? Alright, it looks like some of you have seen it before, but not everyone. Basically, this is a way to use your compass to figure out if the line is square or if there's a favored end. So the process is to sail from one end to the other, record that compass course, subtract 90 degrees to get the perpendicular angle, and then find what the actual wind angle is either from your instruments or luffing or averaging. So the 20 degrees to 200 degrees on this line is the compass heading from one end to the other. 90 degrees to that is the 110, and then what I have is the blue line here is going to be what the wind actually was. So we can see in this diagram that the wind was shifted, wasn't perpendicular, so one end is favored. Now we have to figure out what end that is. I recommend drawing this plot right onto your cabin top. So if you do it in pencil, you can wipe it off, and then it's always there to reference if you ever forget, or maybe someone wasn't paying attention as you were doing it, and they can just take a look. And then if you keep it there throughout the day and update those wind lines after every race day, you can track and see if the wind is giving a persistent shift for the day, and then you can be that much more on your game. Okay, so this is just a little bit of a better diagram. So we have the blue boat down here sailing along. He reads his compass course as 90, so this is going to be 90. And then pin, if he was going the other way, would be 270. And we know that 90 degrees to that is going to be the 0 or the 360 on the compass. So if the wind were coming from this 90 degrees, there's 0 or 360, 90 degrees to the starting line, then no end is favored. The line's perfectly square as it's supposed to be. However, if we head up into the wind, luff our sails, or use our wind instrument, and it tells us that the wind's at 5 degrees, it's in this right quadrant, so this quadrant here is the right quadrant, and that means that the race committee boat is favored. If we got the compass course of the line and then determined that the wind was instead at 355, now we know that the wind is in the left quadrant, and we know that the pin is favored. So whatever side of that 90-degree line, the perpendicular line, the wind is coming from, that's going to be the favored side. So what that actually means, in terms of why it's important, we'll find on this diagram here. So we'll start with the purple line here. We've got the dashed line, that's our perpendicular line. So if we bring it up, we can see they're not in line, but they're both straight up and down. We know that the wind is square, 90 degrees to our starting line, so no end is favored. So it's a neutral line. If we look at the green line now, we can see this dashed line, and if we bring that up, we can see that the wind is in this left quadrant, so the left end is favored. The pin's going to be favored. If we look at the blue line, we take that dashed line and we extend that up just a little bit higher, we see that the wind is going to be in the right quadrant. So that means our race committee boat's favored. So why is this important? If we look, start with this 90-degree line, or the blue line. Oh, that's a really bad line. Let me try that again. So you can see if you start at the pin, you have to cover this extra distance here. So by starting at the race committee boat, you could be buying yourself a boat length or two of distance that you don't have to travel. So starting at the favored end is going to start you a little bit closer to the windward mark. Okay, so we know the course, we know everything, all the information from race committee that they can give us. We've figured out if the line is square, we know what side is favored, if there's a side that's favored. So now we need to figure out how long it's going to take us to travel the length of the starting line. And this is important, mostly in the last minute, 30 seconds, 20 seconds, getting down to the actual start to help you position where you want to be. So in this example, we've got the blue boat, and it takes them 30 seconds to travel from one end of the line to the other. So basically what that means is if we're sailing around in here doing circles, reaches, and on the timer it says 30 seconds to go, and say we wanted to start at the pin, we better get moving to get over there because it's going to take us about 30 seconds. On the other hand, if we're sailing over here and the race committee boat's the favorite end, so we want to start here and it's 30 seconds to go, maybe we want to keep hanging out a little bit, kill some time so that we can hit this area full speed without having to slow down, and we can time it just right. So knowing how long it takes your boat to go from one side to the other is really important to help you start on time, not be late, not be over early especially. Okay, so once we do that, now it's time to determine if one side of the course is favored. So the way to do this is to watch previous starts, if you're so lucky to not be the first one. If you see boats, maybe boats on the left side of the course are lifted, that's going to be the ideal area to sail to. So the other side of the course or other tack is going to be headed. So if you're lifted, you're sailing less distance to the mark. So that's a good thing. Maybe you're observing and you see boats are heeled over more on one side of the course. So that side's going to have more wind than the other, or more puffs. So you might want to take advantage of that higher wind. So that goes into the second bullet point there. Monitor the puffs and the wind shifts. So you're just watching boats around you, just being really observant as to what's going on. You could also monitor your instruments. And if you have maybe a younger crew on board, maybe someone with a little bit less experience, not a bad idea to put them in that position. So likely if they're new on board, they might be rail meat, so they're just sitting there as ballast weight. Give them this as a job. Let them observe and learn as much as possible. And then likely they'll be eager to please, so they're just going to spit information out to you, and you can listen to what you want to listen to from them, but at least you have a constant source of information coming in. Okay, the third bullet here is, are you sailing in current? So that could be tidal current, wind current, but most importantly, we need to find out if we are sailing in current, if it's going to help us or going to hurt us. Likely it'll hurt us. So likely you're going to be sailing into current as you go to the upwind mark and maybe sailing with it as you come downwind. So when can you take advantage of it? When can you not? Maybe there's less current running on the left side of the course, so you want to get over to the left side of the course quickly so you're not fighting that extra current there. Maybe one side of the course is a little more protected from a jetty, so maybe there's less chop. You won't have to power up to get through the waves. You can sail for speed rather than power. But the downside to maybe a jetty is it could be affecting your wind, so it could be giving you some puffs or some fluky wind shifts over there, so you want to be careful for that. So a lot of things to keep in mind. And then, yeah, that goes into the last bullet point there, local topography. So wind's going to shift around buildings, around hills, even along the shore. So you just want to be really observant as to what the local conditions are for the area that you're sailing in. And use that to your advantage especially. Okay, moving into simple starting tactics. So we went through determining the favorite end. So now we're going to look at what area of the line you should start on. And I like to break it into 3 areas. The pin end area, the middle area, and the race committee boat area. So if it's one of your first races out, maybe you haven't sailed in close quarters with a lot of other boats, the middle area is probably going to be your best bet. It's going to give you the most flexibility if you want to change your game plan last minute, and it will likely be a little bit less crowded. So if the pin end or the race committee end is favored, there's going to be a lot of boats vying for the best position over there. If you tend toward that favored side, but more towards the middle, you'll still have that flexibility and you'll still be getting the advantage over starting at the completely unfavored end. So yeah, so first few times out, go for the middle area until you get more comfortable, and then yeah, run for one of the ends if you're confident. So the ley line of the start line ends. So maybe you've gained your confidence, now you want to start right at the pin or right at the race committee boat. Knowing what that ley line is pretty helpful, so it'll allow you to judge if you need to pinch to clear the mark, or maybe you're just not going to make it at all, or maybe you're pointing too high and you have room to bear away if there's no one below you, and gain some speed. So it's not particularly important on this boat or this boat. They both have the ability to bear away and cross the line. This guy is on a port tack, so there's the downside of that. He'll have to tack out of the way of the other boat there, but that's a different story. But he has the ability to bear away, gain some speed, as does the other blue boat with the green line. So the gray boats, this guy here, he's going to want to know his ley line in case he's below the race committee boat, but likely he's going to tack over anyway, so not a big deal for him either. The most important one is going to be this guy here. So knowing that ley line is the most important. So we know maybe we need to pinch up and get through, or maybe we're not going to make it at all, or maybe we need to bear away. But knowing this direct heading, this line here, it's going to be really useful if we want to start at the pin, just knowing that. Okay. Line sights. So this is going to be the next step. Knowing where the pin end is helpful, but a lot of times in bigger fleets or bigger boats, it's going to get covered up by just the sail area or the hulls themselves. So knowing what's in the distance beyond the pin can be really helpful. So a lot of times in the bigger fleets, you'll see the bowman up calling boat lengths to the start line, calling if they're going to be over early. Basically, these boats have gotten a line of sight through the pin to something on shore. So I have this cool little tree here for my example. So we'll start with the green boat. So someone up on the bow of the green boat looking across through the pin is going to see the tree right in line. So they know that they're at the start gun. They're going to be right on the line. The tree is right in line with the buoy. So that's good. That is the ideal case. The yellow boat, on the other hand, if they have a person on the bow sighting through the buoy, looking up, they're going to see the tree behind the pin. So this means that they're going to be late to the start. They're not there yet. They should have gone a little bit faster, maybe made their tack come back around a little bit sooner, but they're going to be a little bit late to the start. The converse to that is going to be the red boat here. So they're sighting through the pin, and they see the tree in front. So that's bad. That means they've gone over early. So they're going to have to duck down and restart, or go around the end and restart. But they are over early, so that is bad. But you can use that line sighting, someone up on the bow, if they're calling boat lengths to the line, that can help you call to your trimmers, so maybe ease out, slow the boat down, or maybe you need to speed up, so trim in, go for speed, go early. Just help gauge yourself in those last few seconds. Okay, so now your type of approach. There's a number of different types of approaches that you can do. Likely it'll get very chaotic, so you'll be trying for one of these, but you might end up with a combination of them. But I've kind of just broken out a few of the very simple ones that you may have been doing if you've been racing for a while and not actually really known about it. The first one I have on here is just reaching back and forth leeward of the line. So just running parallel to the start line back and forth. Pretty simple. Once you're ready to set yourself up, go for the line, and then go for your start. It's one of the more popular approaches, though, so you need to watch out for packs of boats and try to stay clear of them so you're in clear air. You're not fighting with other boats. You have no right-of-way hazards. Just keep clear, especially your first few times out. And don't follow people necessarily. It'll put you right in their bad air, and they'll probably notice that you're following their every move, and they'll try to push you out the back or something. Next one down is the luffing start. Basically, this is if you know exactly on the line where you want to start, and you want to put yourself there and claim your territory, go for the luffing start. But this is all about timing. So you're going to go up to the line, luff your sails, slow the boat down, and basically stop on the line. This is much easier in dinghy boats than it is in keel boats, since it takes so much to stop the keel boat and restart. So much easier in like a laser or sunfish or a 420. Big things with this is make sure you leave a little bit of room to leeward so you can bear away, accelerate, but be careful not to cross the line early. So if you're carrying momentum forward toward the line, you really need to stop the boat or bear away and reset yourself up. The away and back approach, the third one on the list here, can go by a few different names. This is generally what I refer to it as. But basically, you'll sail away from the line on something like a broad reach at about half speed, so not full speed. You're just going to slowly sail away. And then when you're ready, you're going to do a 180, make your turn, and then head back for the line in the reverse of the direction you just came. So as you're heading back to the line, you can adjust for speed to timing the line. So you can slow the boat down, you can speed the boat up. But this one is all about timing, so you need to give time to get through the tack, because they take a little bit of time, especially time to accelerate. And you also need to be careful not to turn back early. So if you turn back early, you're going to have to slow the boat down, so you've pretty much killed that runway you were trying to give yourself to accelerate and get up to full speed right at the line. The last one I have here is port tack approaches. I've kind of just bundled them all into one. For your first few times out, I would try to dissuade you from a port tack approach unless you just kind of screw up and get yourself in that situation. You're going to be maneuvering around boats in close quarters, so if you're not comfortable with that, really try to go with one of the other approaches where you're going to be on a starboard tack and you'll have right of way. So on a port tack, you're going to have to dodge all of the other boats, give way to them. So it can put yourself in a very dangerous situation if you're not prepared for it. So I try to dissuade new racers from that approach. Stick with something simple that'll put you on a starboard tack so you don't have to worry about getting out of the way, except in maybe windward-leeward scenarios. And then finally, tips for the approach. So keep room to leeward of you so you can bear away slightly and accelerate. So you'll accelerate faster on like a close reach than you will just trying to dig through on a close haul. So if you bear away, get some speed, and then point back up to your close haul. If you do need to reduce your speed, luff your jib first. So what that's going to do is, if my hand is the boat, it's going to move your center of effort aft as you let out the jib. So it's going to put that center of effort in the mainsail, so you're still going to be able to point the boat, but because you're luffing a sail, you're still depowering, so you'll slow down but still be able to point and keep that close haul position. Alternatively, if you do luff and now you need to accelerate, you want to trim the jib first. So by trimming the jib first, you move the center of effort forward. That'll help push the bow down, help you bear away, accelerate, and then as you trim in the main, you're going to get that pointing ability back, so it'll bring the bow of the boat back up. So you're using your trimming and your sails to help steer the boat rather than using a lot of rudder and creating a lot of drag. So really try to use your trimming and your timing on your trimming to help you reduce your rudder movement. And the last point that I have here is just be confident. Most importantly, have fun. If you're afraid, other boats will likely notice. You don't want to get pushed out the back because you're nervous, or you don't want to get put in a terrible position in dirty air, or just mixed in behind a bunch of boats if you can avoid it. So just be confident. If you know you're in the right, don't be afraid to yell. There will be a lot of yelling. And yeah, just have a great time. So with that, good luck at your next race and sail fast.